Developmental social experience changes behavior in threatening environment in Corydoras Catfish. Okay. Got a couple authors on here. Let's see, where is this coming from? Coordinated response to threats are important for predator evasion in many species. The study examines the effect of tactile interaction. Corydoras Aeneas. I know, bro. Why couldn't they do it with the $5 billion Cory? Where's the Hephaestus at? You know? Steve said, I got my frozen rodents off Amazon today. They showed up in great shape. Surprisingly. Okay, I'm going to pretend I didn't read that. What are you talking about, Steve? My frozen rodents showed up in great shape. Okay. They reared the fish in a mixed age group of age-matched peers and adults, or with age-matched peers only, same age and condition. A startle test was conducted with small groups of subadults from either social rearing condition. Prior to any startle events, the SAC, so the SAC is the same age and condition group, and then the MAC is the mixed age and condition group. So the SAC individuals, subadults, had increased tactile communication compared to the mixed age and condition subadults, but the same age and condition individuals were overall less active. Okay, let's go through the actual thing here, because this sounded interesting to me because of the communication aspect. Animals, in particular, improved foraging and predator evasion. To fully reap the benefits of social living, individuals and groups must effectively coordinate their activities with one another, as some degree of group coordination ultimately provides these benefits, and improved coordination of activities between individuals generally improves individual outcomes within a group. And I'm linking this in the chat. Flocks of pigeons exhibit highly coordinated response to predators that utilize self-organization rules. All right. They're doing a few examples. Two essential aspects of effective group coordination are cohesion and communication. Cohesion species. Cohesive groups generally coordinate group movements more effectively, and effect demonstrated in multiple species, including fish. Let's go. Communication between group members also facilitates group coordination and enhances anti-predator response. Some forms of group coordination, okay, alarm calls, etc., etc. Group communication before and during a predator threat can be influenced by a prey species' fear of predation. And in the Trinidadian guppy, Persilla reticulata, the perceived risk of predation caused fish to develop stronger social ties and higher group cohesion. I've seen some fish school a lot better when you put a bigger fish that's threatening in there with them. So, yep. All right, I'm following. While communication and coordination are crucial to survival and reproduction in many species, individuals generally require developmental inputs in order to learn and express effective social coordination behaviors. In the cichlid P. tenuatus, group coordination is a socially developed behavior, and subadults raised in isolation show increased aggression. So this is something interesting concept, because I do feel like some fish like that I've bred, and I've seen people talk about this, like when you breed fish and raise them with other fish, they seem to be kind of less aggressive in general. And I have kind of said, like, yo, I need to socialize my fish. It seems to be kind of a thing, man. It's interesting. Are some fish that are not considered community fish, over time you can just breed them to be nicer, I guess? That's probably an established thing, right? And I've had some fish that snuck away as an egg and ended up somewhere by themselves, and they're definitely assholes compared to the ones that grew up with everyone else. I think that's something I've noticed. All right, so with that cichlid, the subadults raised in isolation showed increased aggression, a delayed response to external stimuli, less shoal cohesion, and lower growth compared to their age-matched peers raised in groups. In the highly social cichlid Neolamprogris poultry, being raised with or without adults also affects social behavior. Ooh, interesting. Okay, with or without adults. I mean, well, I feel like most people take the kids out from the adults for a lot of fish. Maybe not with some of the Tanganicans, I don't know. Being raised with or without adults affects social behavior, albeit in concert with ecological experiences. Fish that grew up in mixed-age family groups in a seemingly safe environment showed the most pro-social behavior and best What? We got to put the fish in multi-generational households. Okay. With predator experience altering these effects. The predatory mite, okay, it's so random, bro. The predatory mite, Phytocilius persimilis, exhibits a similar effect of social isolation, with mites reared in social isolation showing lower social competence and poorer reproductive outcomes. Sorry. Oh man. So sometimes reading these, there's always something that makes me laugh, like, yo, we're studying the social behavior of mites. Like, it's just so funny. And then some of the things that hasn't been studied yet, it's like you studied the social behavior of mites before you got to this. You know what I mean? Dogbook 5251 said, what a comparison. That's what I'm saying. And Bruce said, how do you jump from looking at Corys and saying I need to check out mites? That's what I'm saying. Get to the fish. Okay, these studies underscore the importance of social experiences and the development of group coordination skills in individuals. Social rearing generally promotes behaviors that are beneficial for group living, such as reduced aggression, quicker responses to stimuli, and stronger group cohesion. It also suggests that isolation can lead to significant behavioral and growth deficits. There's a lot of fish keepers that need to hear this, myself. Larvae raised in isolation exhibit lower social competence than larvae reared socially. In this study, we reared larvae either socially or in isolation, and then placed larvae in groups and assessed their social interactions. We found that larvae reared in isolation initiated fewer nudges with group mates, and furthermore, were likely to C-start, parentheses, an involuntary anti-predator response. Oh, wow. Okay, C-start. When they physically touch others. This underscores that nudging has an innate component, but nonetheless requires social experience to develop properly. This raises interesting questions about how different kinds of social experiences impact social development of Corydoras and Aeneas. Okay. This is intriguing in part because Corydoras catfish exhibit tactile interactions as a form of communication. These discrete tactile interactions, termed nudges, have been shown to facilitate coordination and cohesion in groups of these fishes. They're deployed during group threat responses, in which nudges serve as a form of communication to coordinate group responses to a threat. Steve says, about to be up there, the up-and-coming CPD breeder of the hemisphere. Let's go. Let's go. Big Steve, hottest up-and-coming breeder in general. And best breeder of Nanochromis transvestitis in the world. Trademark. All right. Having a variety of sizes may make the shoal less effective in confusing predators, so there are likely benefits to overcome that disadvantage. Anike said, as humans, we should understand that beings need to grow up in societies and communities and families are born into. As a 60 scoop survivor, I'm unsurprised there are problems. Socialization, man. It's also likely that very young juveniles that hatch as a group must live in juvenile-only shoals for some time before encountering and joining a mixed-age shoal. Since C. Aeneas eggs are typically laid in clusters and parents do not provide parental care after eggs have been laid. So that's interesting because... So I got the orange laser fry, and they definitely go off and hang out together. I haven't put them with the adults, but with the panda cories, I feel like I've had a bit more of mixed sizes. And I do feel like the younger ones hang out with the younger ones for a bit. I thought it was just like, yeah, they don't want to get eaten by adults, but I feel like they kind of do it even when they're big enough to not get eaten by the adults. I don't know. A couple of fish said, I think there's a snake that has adapted its attack to compensate for the fish's C-start in its natural environment. Okay. Anike said, I love my kids, but I don't provide all the emotional needs humans are actually meant to have. It takes a village. I guess that's where it comes from. Okay. This paper examines the social rearing conditions. Okay. We evaluated flight responses by applying a threat stimulus to a group of subadult fish. That's the MAC. And then we have the same age social housing condition, which is the SAC. Okay. I'm only saying that once. We define a subadult C. Aeneas as a fish that has attained adult coloration but not yet sexually mature. Our previous study of C. Aeneas larvae showed that habituation to tactile stimulus and thus to receiving nudges occurs starting in the larval stage, which results in a gradual decrease in flight response from tactile interactions as fish become an adult. Accordingly, the subadult fish in the study had the fully developed nudging behavior. We evaluated threat responses in subadult Cyaneas in two contexts: a context that's unfamiliar to fish but not directly threatening, and then a second threatening context in which fish were faced with a direct potential threat in the form of a startle test. And they even have a hypothesis. 2 hypotheses. But we haven't even gotten into the methods. Jesus. The first is first hypothesis is that the absence of adult Cyaneas during development makes subadult fish less socially coordinated. We would thus predict a difference between the baseline behavior in the SAC and MAC groups. We expect lower group cohesion and nudging in the SAC fish, which have not been exposed to socially active adults. Second, the absence of adult Cyaneas during development may lead to subadult fish being unable to adequately respond to a threat. Wait, does this make them easier to catch though? Hold up. Throughout the study, okay. Yeah, so they think there's going to be some differences here. So general husbandry, I'll skim over this. But this was in Maryland. Let's go. W97, cotton Madre de Dios region of the southern Peruvian Amazon region in October 2018. We obtained these fish in January 2021, and they have been maintained in our lab since. Our adult stock occurring in my tank right now. That's fine. The tanks were 76 by 30 by 45 centimeters. The stocking density of these tanks were 14. It's twice a week with thawed frozen bloodworms. Water changes were performed once a week from a central RO supply, remineralized with tropic marine remineral tropic to 95 to 100 parts per million total dissolved solids. 2 air-driven sponge filters, as well as sand substrate, artificial plants, and large PVC pipes were covered. Eggs were collected from adult stock tanks in 2 batches, one in January 2022, one in March 2022. Both batches collected from the same 2 adult stock tanks. Multiple clutches of eggs were laid over 2 days. Because of the unique sperm drinking copulation mechanism in these fish, we can be confident that eggs day of 2-day spawning events for both batches. We put all the eggs laid in both adult stock tanks in separate enclosure, thereby mixing full sibling groups. This ensures that the degree of relatedness did not differ when fish were later allocated to experimental social rearing tanks. This also simulates natural spawning conditions when many pairs of adults spawn around the same time and lay eggs in the same area. Steve said I need to call her pro. Shut up. Embroom said, wonder who this paper is by. CW097 are not technically in ES yet, since they haven't gotten identified. They have a little gold line over the shoulder that stands out. Ooh. Well, let's see. I mean, it sounds like it's by the University of Maryland, but I don't think it's not like a student paper. Yeah, where is the freaking... Maybe I need to go to the publisher link. It wouldn't be the first time a paper got something wrong. Oh, wait, okay. This work... Oh, it was supported. Funding. This work was supported by the President's Postdoctoral Fellowship and APE Promise Academy Fellowship. So maybe this is some doctoral student thing. Yo, I might have a friend that might... Wait, do I recognize his name? Wait a second. Do I know Austin? Okay, I'll follow up on this later. I might know Austin. Wait, let me message him. Because I think he said that he did lab work on Corey's. Let me see. I just messaged him in Discord. Okay, we'll ask about the CW097. Sperm drinking is crazy. Listen, you gotta do what you gotta do. Okay, where was I? We'll figure out about the CW097 thing. If it was him, I'll ask. I think it was, though, actually, because his name's definitely Austin. He definitely went there. Okay, here we go. Experimental husbandry. All right. I went through this. Experimental housing. Okay. Whew. So, across both batches of experiments, we collected data from 28 groups of 3 juvenile fish randomly chosen from the same enclosures. So, all individuals in the group were familiar with one another. All right. 3 tests. Cameras are mounted above each tank at a uniform height for filming fish behavior. Honestly, the mite thing is kind of making sense if it was Austin, because he's into ants and all sorts of things. So it kind of makes sense as the range would be that wide. Each test tank was filmed for 2 hours, starting 30 minutes after filming began. A stimulus in the form of a single tap on the glass of the test tank with one finger was applied to each tank in 15-minute intervals. Tap tests, like the one we employ in the study, have been used to assess anti-predator response and responses to potential danger in other fish systems. We refer to these taps as startles hereafter. After 2 hours of filming, the fish finished the experiment. The 3 fish from each test tank were then placed in the social housing tank designated for fish who had completed the experiment, thus avoiding multiple tests of the same individuals. When all fish were transferred, a 50% water change in each tank was performed using the RO water. This was then repeated for each experimental group, resulting in 28 total trials. Damn. I'll be honest, this is one of the better university type papers like this I've read. I like how they justify everything. Like, they got a source after every single thing they do, like even the tap test. It's kind of nice. Okay. We analyzed 2 aspects of the video: a baseline period defined as 5 minutes before the first startle event. Okay, here we go. Maven, calm down. To measure the cohesion of the fish. Yeah, it is an interesting subject, man. Let me see. Okay, he hasn't responded. In addition to scoring nudges, we recorded some basic activity and sociality level information during the baseline period. We recorded the cumulative amount of time in seconds of all the possible combinations of activity among the fish. Combinations being no movement, 1 individual moving, 2 individuals moving, and all moving. What's up, Monster Fish Girl? The cohesion of fish, whether all 3 were apart, all 3 were together, or 2 fish were in a group separate from the 3rd fish, and the amount of time in seconds the wall surfing behavior was observed. Cohesion was defined as being within 2 body lengths of another fish. Wall surfing behavior occurs when the fish moves. Okay, we know what wall surfing is. It's considered a non-standard behavior and potential indicator of stress. And then we got a source here. As part of recording this information, we assumed that as default, all fish were actively moving, all fish were grouped together, and that the wall surfing was not present. This default coordination state is the most commonly observed state in the wild. Here was only recorded if it occurred for 5 or more consecutive seconds. So if they did something that was a non-default behavior, unless they did it for longer than 5 seconds, they did not count. Okay. All right. Let's go down a bit more. Here we have a figure, a diagram of a sea start threat response in a Corydoras Catfish larva. Something about its mouth drawn here is kind of funny. But you see they do the little C, curve their body, and pew, sea start. To score the behavioral responses, we scored the same basic activity information as described above 3 seconds before each startle and 3 seconds after the startle. We recorded the number of active fish and the number of fish that were in cover 3 seconds before and after the startle, as well as how many fish moved, froze, or performed a sea start maneuver. The sea start is an involuntary response where the fish... Okay, so here's all the stats stuff. Let's get to the baselines. So the SAC group exhibited significantly higher rates of nudging than the MAC group. Okay, we have a chart here. MAC fish were less cohesive than SAC fish, although this difference failed to be statistically significant. SAC groups exhibited lower levels of activity than MAC groups. There's no difference in wall surfing tendencies based on rearing conditions. We found no association with cohesion state after scare event. Okay. Seems to be some difference here. So on the left, we have probability of transitioning between states versus the housing condition. And let me scroll down. I'm just trying. The model changes to group cohesion in response to startles, improved model fit. This difference of 13 provides evidence that a model without housing conditions has essentially no support. SAC fish generally tended to improve cohesion in response to a startle, 19 out of 52 instances of increasing cohesion, whereas MAC fish tended to reduce it, 15 out of 60 instances of reducing cohesion. The same number of MAC groups increased cohesion as decreased, but more SAC groups increased cohesion than decreased, 19 versus 8. Table entries labeled colored blue represent groups that exhibited greater cohesion after startle than before, while entries colored red represents those that had less cohesion after startle than before. Okay. So after startle, we have the all together. So all apart, 2 together, 1 apart, and all together. Okay. Equations and graphs are cool. Yeah. That's interesting. 2 together and 1 apart had the most here, 14. That's interesting. And then after the startle. No all together, man? So neither social varying condition nor startle event were significant predictors of the proportion of fish in the group that exhibited a C-start response to a threat. All right, let me scroll down a bit to the discussion so they can explain. Okay, our results show that at a baseline, when fish were exploring an unfamiliar environment prior to any startle events, SAC subadults have increased nudging behavior compared to their MAC peers, but are less active. In terms of startle events, we saw no effect of habituation across the 4 startle events in this experiment. All correlations between our response variables and startle event were not significant. And in models where startle event was a significant predictor of response variable, there was no consistent trend that indicates habituation. Okay, so maybe their hypothesis didn't come true. Sackfish were more likely to freeze after a startle than their MAC peers. Oh, okay, here we go. Additionally, group cohesion before and after 4 startle events was significantly different, with the same age and condition fish increasing cohesion more than the mixed age and cohesion fish when startled. Same age cohesion fish, condition fish also exhibited a higher degree of anti-predator behavior in response to startle events. Were more likely to be uncovered both before and after a startle, as well as freeze in response to startles, which is a common anti-predator behavior in these fishes. These results ran counter to our original hypothesis, with the same age and condition individuals being more interactive and cautious than the mixed age and condition individuals, despite being socially deprived of interactions with adult fish. Okay. These unexpected findings highlight the diverse ways developmental experience modifies behavior with important ecological consequences. Our hypothesis that mixed age and condition fish would exhibit heightened anti-predator response stems from the fact that young animals living in mixed groups often acquire critical life skills from observing adults. The locality that our study population originates does contain several predator species, and this population of fish has a variety of responses to predation pressure. Accordingly, we hypothesized that the juvenile Cyaneus would learn anti-predator behaviors from observing adult group mates. Our results that the mixed age and condition fish exhibited a lower degree of caution in response to startle seem to run counter to this, but nonetheless, both phases of our study indicate that the behavioral development of young fish is influenced by the presence of adult conspifics. The effect we observe is that instead of acquiring enhanced it makes sense to me. Like, I don't think that necessarily because they weren't as, like, to me, them being less scared and stuff when being in the mixed condition, I find that as being a positive, and probably them just feeling more comfortable being in the group. The behavior of fish during the baseline indicates that the same age and condition fish are more cautious than their mixed age and condition peers. Same age and condition individuals exhibited heightened nudging behavior compared to the mixed peers, despite markedly lower activity levels. This implies that the sackfish devote more energy to social coordination and less to exploration. In addition, the lowered activity of sackfish suggests heightened attention to minimizing conspicuousness. Cyaneus often deploys a freeze response to take advantage of their cryptic coloration to escape detection. And freezing and lowered activity as an anti-predator response strategy has been shown to be present in other systems, such as black carp. An additional reason for decreased activity among the sackfish may be attributed to predation pressure leading prey species to conserve energy for predator detection, an effect seen in other species, including brown trout. Ibrahim said, it would be interesting if they did the same experience on a fish other than Cory. I wonder how it differs with something that doesn't have as much built-in defense. Yeah, I agree. I think some of the cichlids they mentioned earlier would be interesting. I'd like a pistogramma would be something I'd be very interested in knowing how they react. Macfish may not exhibit this energy-conserving pattern of behavior due to the group's security that they experience during development. Adults maintaining vigilance with a shoal setting may allow young fish in that shoal to forage without the need to reduce activity to devote energy to anti-predator vigilance, a phenomenon that has been observed in meerkats. This is consistent with previous studies that show small that's going to be like a behavior that has been seen in West African cockroaches. Like, you just never know what they're going to reference. This is consistent with previous voles. In addition to their larger size, adult Cianeas have fully developed armor and locking venomous spines, which may further deter predators and offer more protection to vulnerable juveniles. Kind of Imbroom talking about the built-in defenses. The Corydoras genus also exhibits Mullerian co-mimicry between related species, which suggests that predators may learn to recognize Corydoras catfish are generally poor prey items, and juveniles benefit from associating with larger Corydoras, which are more easily perceived and avoided. Given that Corydoras species do not exhibit aggressive behavior, the costs to the juveniles of associated with larger fish are limited, further emphasizing the benefit to the young fish of shoaling with more visible adults, whose appearance may deter predators and provide protection to the subadults and let them forage more freely. Okay. So I got this, I'll put this link in the chat one more time, but I got it pinned. This is an interesting experiment, though. I like that they did the hypothesis, and then it was different than what they expected, but still kind of going in the direction of the kind of effects they were looking to find. Good paper. Come on. That was interesting. Imbroom said there are some imitator species that intentionally look similar to Corydoras to take advantage of that. I mean, if other species can take advantage of that, then yeah, I definitely can believe that the younger Corys themselves can feel more confident